Hello and welcome back to the Be More Connected Summit. I'm your host, Elise Preston, and today I am so thrilled to be here with the incredible Desiree Adaway. Hi, Desiree.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I am doing pretty wonderful, and as we deal with these uncertain times. So,
Yes, absolutely. And Desiree is a consultant, trainer, coach, speaker who works to build resilient, equitable, and inclusive organizations. She holds a vision for people's lives, workplaces, and communities until they can hold it for themselves. I love this bio so much. Uh, and I would love to do a little check-in with you just about where you are in the world right now and how you're holding up during these unprecedented times.
yeah, so I'm doing all right. I'm very fortunate that the work that I do has not stopped, right? Like, guess what? Before the pandemic, there was oppression and oppressive systems because we're seeing that like literally played out in front of our eyes
Big time.
in a way that folks who in the past may have denied it are literally unable to deny it anymore.
It's too evident.
It is plain to see. Um, and it has been really great to continue to work with organizations that are like, nope, this is a priority. We're going to continue this work. So in that sense, I've been very fortunate. I've also been very fortunate to be able to be involved in some local work in terms of collective mutual aid and building of like, what do we need here right now in this time? And just seeing people kind of show up has been really beautiful. And really seeing people really say, okay, we must physically be distant, but now is the time for us to be more connected than ever. So all of those things have given me some hope. And then also, while I am not Jewish, nor am I Christian, Holy Week always for me is something that fills me spiritually. And knowing that there are millions of people whose focus during this window of time is about liberation and freedom. And I hear people speak about freedom and talk about resilience of community and understand that, and to speak about hierarchies and oppression and us not forgetting our neighbors. So all of those combined, I think, even though it is uncertain and unprecedented time, I'm still filled with a lot of hope of who we can be on the other side of this.
Yes, and that is really remarkable that organizations are really prioritizing the work that you do in the world at this time and staying consistent with that, even through all of the challenges and disruptions to traditional work that we're seeing.
And I think in part for a couple of reasons. I don't know any company that's going to get through this without a layoff or furlough of some kind.
Sure.
And I think for some organizations, one of the opportunity that they see in all of this is if we're going to have to lay people off, let's go down right to the roots and let's think about our culture before we start hiring people again. Like let's build some foundational blocks that maybe we didn't have before or no longer fit us. And so I've talked to some organizations and they do see this as an opportunity of, you know what, we get to rebuild our culture too. Right. And if you think about like environmental justice, like this is a time for us right now to be like, yeah, no, this is what the future looks like.
Yes.
So I think that same ability to say, you saw what happened last time. None of your systems worked. All of your people were left behind. Now's the time to do the work so that the next catastrophe, the next emergency, y'all are in a better position.
Yes. And you spoke about supporting organizations to rebuild their culture from the foundation up. And I would love if you could speak a little bit more about the Adaway group the core values of the work that you do and how you
Yeah.
support people.
So the Adaway Group is a Black woman-owned firm. That's me. And I provide consulting and training and services in the areas of race equity and inclusion and social justice and organizational change. And me and my team, we specialize in helping organizations do the personal and the institutional work required to build equitable workplaces and cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about most of these organizations, who are they and who are they built for is the question. Bringing organizations. So we know who your organization was built by, but we can change who it was built for. That's the work that we can do right now.
Right.
On the other side of what's happening currently. So my values are really, my approach centers in intersectional race equity, which we know from experience and research to be the most effective and powerful way to kind of create and sustain organizational change. So I have really 4 values that I do my work in. And one is liberation. I carry it on my body. The word liberation is physically on my form.
Beautiful.
But it's not optional. It's necessary. And it only begins when we start to experience ourselves differently in the world. My other core value, what I believe in, and my company believes in, is acceptance, right? That we don't believe in transactional relationships, period. We embrace the transformational, and at the center of our lives should always be balance and relationship and joy. If I right relationship with people, then I don't want to be in relationship with folks. That's a real critical piece. I explain this to companies that I work with. I would be transactional with systems. So I'm transactional with capitalism. I'm transactional with a lot of systems and institutions.
Sure.
I am never transactional with humans. My relationships have to be around how can we both be transformed for being in relationship with each other. And then my work has this ethic of care, that we can hold each other accountable and hold each other with care and do this work in ways that don't replicate systems of supremacy and oppression. I can do this work and not cause more harm and trauma.
Yes.
And then my last kind of what I believe in and what my company believes in is determination, that we show up ready to do the work, right? Because we don't get free until the most vulnerable people can live without fear and discrimination and retaliation. And we see this happening every day. People are like, oh, our grocery store workers are essential. And I'm like, no, they're actually being sacrificed to capitalism.
100%.
Because people who are essential, we pay them well, we give them what they need to do their job. Like if you're essential, think about who's essential in your world, your life and your work.
How do you treat them?
Right. We don't treat people who are essential like that. Right. People literally going into chicken plants in Georgia, knowing that they're getting sick, but having literally no other choice but to keep their job and dying. And so.
And what choice is that?
And what choice is that? But we know that systems like capitalism is built around sacrificing folks. And I think, again, that is no more apparent than what is happening right now in front of us.
Yes. There's so much that you shared there that is so critical and so pivotal for us to really be grappling with and reflecting on right now. I love the way that you said that a key part of your work is making sure that every single relationship that you're engaged with is reciprocal and that it is not transactional. That's super powerful. And then also weaving in that piece about allowing your relationships with systems to be transactional, is I haven't heard that languaging before. And I think that it is so wise and so needed because in so many ways, like we have our minds, our behaviors have become so colonized by these systems that we're swimming in. So how do we begin to distance ourselves from that is so important.
I know that these systems were never built for me. They will never take care of me. They will never love me. They will never keep me from harm. They will always sacrifice me when it comes down to it. Right? And as long as I know that about the system, then I also understand the system isn't going away tomorrow. So what do I need to get me and my people what we need in the meantime from this system? Wow, I'm trying to take it apart.
Yes, and it's such complex and nuanced and layered work, and requires so much consistent commitment. And I love how on your site you really you presence that paradox in saying that we cannot do this kind of work without combining this practice of practice and reflection with urgency and patience.
Yeah.
And how do you support your clients in holding these paradoxical concepts? Because I think that is something that can be really tricky when we live in a society that's built on being so linear and black and white and one-dimensional.
Right.
Yeah.
No, so there are a couple of things that I do. One is I'm very honest with my clients, and that, y'all, this ain't gonna happen overnight. If you're just trying to check a box, I'm not the person to work with you.
Sure.
So I get very clear about who I work with. But the other piece there is we need to build in time for reflection, period. So, but we are also functioning again in this capitalistic Western society, which does not give us time to rest. Right. And so there are times, because of funders or circumstances, we have to make these very urgent decisions. So I always tell clients, you don't make the urgent, you need a policy or procedure for how and when urgent decisions will be made. So what's the rubrics? What are the factors that determine when an urgent decision when we need to be in urgency?
Sure.
Once we have that figured out, then we get to say, okay, so that's one piece. The other piece is I have to trust you. I have to trust that the decision you may make without me there will still have my best interests at heart.
Ooh,
right?
So important.
And there's some transparency and some trust. That trust comes from boundaries. That trust comes from you holding confidence. Like there are all these components that build what trust is. And just because I work with you or I sit next to you for 16 years in a cube, does not mean I trust you. It does not mean that I trust for you to make the best decision for me or mine. And so I need to understand, what are the parameters for when needed? What are our systems to make sure, is this really urgent or is this what's happening? And I need them to understand that they're going to get it wrong a lot of the time, but that doesn't do the work. And so you have to be in right relationship with people, because when I do fall short, when I do make that wrong call, when things do get out of whack, again, you and I still need to know, how are we going to stay in right relationship with each other? How do we apologize? What does that mean for us to communicate? All these things, right? We need to build up. One of the things I do within organizations is help them build that muscle around having difficult conversations.
Sure.
Right? Because we all need to know how to do this. And as we dig in deeper and do this work, because it's not if you make a mistake, it's when you make the mistake, how are we then going to stay in right relationship with each other? So it is, right? Like, if anybody ever tells you that there's these 5 steps or 10 steps you can take, and I'm like, they lying to you. Don't get them.
That's not it.
That's not it. Because for me, the work is the work, right? It is us being in relationship with each other. That's actually the real work. what
Right.
those policies and procedures and things look like. Those are our values in action.
Mm.
But our work is, how do we be in community together? How do we not leave folks behind? How does that become, how do we actually stop thinking about Desiree the individual, but think about the collective?
Right.
How do we bring history into our relationships, but also not bring shame or blame or guilt into those relationships as well?
Yes. And I think that that process of not just thinking about ourselves as individuals is really rooted in that first value that you were talking about, going back to the piece about liberation and how do we foster this liberation consciousness. And I'd
Well,
love if
that's
you
the
could
mythology of this
speak
country.
more. Mm,
I mean, this country is built on this mythology of individualism, of, this kind of rugged individualism, this myth of
right.
meritocracy. You just work hard and you get what you deserve. I mean, Dr. Abraham Kendi, that's his definition of racism, is not hate of someone because of race or skin color. His definition is, it's self-interest, it's political, social, cultural, and economic self-interest.
Yes.
And because of our self-interest, we then make laws and policies that support our self and not the self-interest of others.
Of others. Yeah, I think that's such an important distinction to make, because when we are conditioned within these systems that create the mentality, the mindset, the belief that our ability to thrive, excel, means that we have to take from others, that we need to be fostering fear and separation so that we can excel or grow. Like, that's pretty commonly held and accepted, but
Yeah.
is absolutely at fault with some of the universal laws that exist
Yeah.
for how we can actually live and thrive and prosper together.
Well, we can just see what's happening right now in this world. So how many stories have you read, or people you may know personally? I know plenty of people personally who left New York, who left DC, who left San Francisco, and they went to their summer homes, or they had enough money they could rent Airbnbs, out in the country, or did all these other things, right?
Sure.
And I get it. They're like, I'm not going to be here sick with my family. And I have options, and I can afford not to be here and be sick. I don't have to take the subway. All these things that people, every moment in time, we're making decisions that either support power dynamics or try to dismantle them.
Right.
Right? Think that. We just think, oh, I had 20 minutes and I need to get to the other side of town, so I didn't get on public transportation. I did this. Or, even though I moved in this neighborhood, my kid doesn't go to the school, that school. Like, all of these points in time, we're making decisions that impact the collective. So this is why I always tell people are like, if we just came together more and we just ate together. I'm like, ain't enough macaroni salad in the world. Dismantle white supremacy, y'all.
Right.
That ain't it.
Right.
So
it's have like having to pair that individual work, because that's important too. Like, we need to have dialogue, we need to have conversations, we need to meet each other where we are, but that alone is not going to shift entire systems and structures and culture. Like, there's a whole lot of other work and unpacking we need to do alongside that.
And the way that we've set these systems to work, again, with this mythology about who we are and the reasons, part of the dominant culture tells itself stories about why it's superior to other folks. And we know this to be true because you can think about the stories not that long ago, right? When we're like, oh, only men can be surgeons, or men can fly planes. And why is that? Well, they have the stamina and they have the skeletal, like all these reasons of why that is true, which none of it is true, right? But again, we tell ourselves stories if we're in the dominant culture around why we are superior. And I think that, part of that interpersonal work, I always tell people, whatever that thing is in you that makes you feel superior to somebody else, that is the work.
Right.
And we all have it. And we don't want to acknowledge it, right? But that thing that is within us that makes you think, consciously or unconsciously, that you are superior to somebody else, that there is a hierarchy of humanity.
Right.
That's the work.
That's where the work lies. And I was listening.
And it starts with the interpersonal, but that interpersonal, and this is where the majority of white people wanted to stop with the interpersonal, right? Like, I'm a good white person. So, right? And I'm like, you can be a good person all day long, but this system is still trying to kill me. And I'm a good person.
Right. And so
don't care
collectively,
nothing. That's right.
What are we going to do about that?
What are we going to do about it?
I was listening to a podcast recently, and I heard the guest say that one of their teachers was speaking about this internalized white supremacy that we all have, whether you're white, whether you're a person of color. And they described it as whiteness always being in the basement of our heart doing push-ups, like preparing, get ready to rise back up. Even when you're doing the work, even when you are a facilitator, when you're in this space, when you're speaking, it's like, it's still living in there.
So I work with a wonderful woman named Jessica Fish. Hello, Jessica Fish. A white woman in her mid-30s. And Jessica and she's on my team, one of my head consultants. And Jessica and I have worked together for I don't know how many years. And one of the things Jessica said to me when we first started working together, which I tell the story all the time, and it is, to me, so right. Jessica said to me, she said, Desiree, at some point in time, my whiteness will betray me. We're probably going to be busy and running around, and I'm going to be anxious or in my own head or whatever. But at some point, I'm going to do or say something where my whiteness is going to betray me. What are we going to do about that?
Right.
And I remember looking at her and I was like, oh, okay. Like, I was like, and she's right. And it made me trust her more.
Builds that trust,
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, she's not going to try to hide and be like, find some other reason. She's like, yep, that thing in me will rear its head.
And that's true for all of us, right?
For all of us. And she said, and my whiteness will betray me. And how are we going to handle it when it happens? And so being able to have those kind of conversations with people are critical for staying in right relationship with them, and critical for doing the work, right? I'm straight. I know at some point, my heteronormativity is going to mess something up with my queer friends. Well, let's talk about this right now.
Right. And so how do we begin to do that work of not just talking about it, but really being about it?
So I think there are a couple of things. I think that, one, we have to do our own healing before we come to other people, right? Like, you can't be bringing me all your stuff. Two, I'm a big believer. When I say I think we can hold each other accountable and hold each other with care, I do not believe that I get to destroy you in the name of freedom. And I see this happening all the time with folks in these spaces, right? Who are like, oh, you said that one thing, so now I gotta make you pay. Right? Like
that shaming culture.
This shaming culture. So there's no grace. I think for me, being a true leader is understanding how forgiveness and reconciliation are core concepts of leadership. And I show people, I don't believe in throwing people away. I just don't believe in it, because people have shown me grace over and over and over and over again in my 54 years. I could write tunes about how all the ways I've screwed up, all the people that I've hurt, all the ways I've been imperfect in this work. And it's keeping our mind on, we all get to start from somewhere, right? Like this sense that people must know it and have it all. And I'm like, some people just started yesterday. And I remember when I started, and people showed me a ton of grace, and I'm gonna show them grace. So I always say, as long as someone is teachable, reachable, and ready, I'm here for you.
I love that.
I'm in this
Teachable,
one
reachable,
alone.
and ready.
And I don't waste my life force on people that are not teachable, reachable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I have very clear boundaries for myself as well. I do not help white folks process race. That's what other white people are there to do. I help Black and Brown and Indigenous folks process the trauma from racism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I feel my gifts and my talents are best suited. So yeah, I'm not gonna help you process your emotions around race. But I am here to teach you. I'm here to learn with you. I'm here to build community with you, to collaborate with you. And I think that we can be super honest and call the thing again, and not be triggered and sit there and deal with that and stay in community with one another.
Mm. Especially because this audience is going to be a lot of folks who are leaders and change makers. I feel like that piece that you brought up around boundaries is so important, and also really allowing yourself, giving yourself the permission to say, this is where my gifts are, and this is where I'm going to move and where I'm going to operate, and allowing that to really be where you direct your energy versus pouring it into places where it's just not aligned for you.
I am not for everybody. I'm 54 years old, and I definitely learned that. I'm not for everybody. There are other teachers that people connect with. Feel free, right?
Sure.
Like, go where you need to do to get the medicine that you need. It's not always, it's not me. I'm not for everybody, but I am secure in what I do well and what is my place in this work. And I just do my work. And I trust and believe in the universe that your work is somebody else is out there waiting for you to help you do that if it's not.
Yes. And I'd love to talk about that trust and belief in the universe a little bit as we think about this time. And this is a time of intense change and transformation. And I'm wondering if you could speak about what kind of transformation you're seeing in your work at this time. And I feel like you did touch on this a little bit at the beginning, but what you hope this moment could inspire.
Yeah. So, God, what do I hope? You know, it's really fascinating because this moment is telling us to become more isolated and more alone and more in ourselves and more with our family unit and more separated. And I worry that on the once we get through this, that's what people are going to be left with. So I was doing a free webinar a couple of weeks ago, and I had pulled some information. You know, what happened after schools were integrated in the Atlanta area is white folks actually didn't put up that big of a fuss. What they did is they just moved.
White flight.
They just left. And they built their own communities, more so, right? And so they built, oh, we don't want Black swimming in pools with us. Oh, we'll put a pool behind our house. Like, we don't want to go to that park. Oh, we'll literally build what is essential to a park in our own backyard so our kids can say that. Like, these are the things that happen over and over again.
Yep.
And so my fear is, what is this social distancing doing to us? And in what ways is it replicating these systems of separateness and segregation? But for me, I'm hoping Dr. Bobby Harrow has two frameworks that I use a lot. One's just called the cycle of socialization, but the partner framework is the cycle of liberation. And in the middle of the cycle of liberation is what's at the core of that work. What keeps that work what helps to get us free? And Dr. Haro says, basically, you need community. You need other people. You need joy. You need some kind of spiritual grounding. Dr. Haro's like, that's whatever it is you want it to be. But to do this work, there has to be a belief greater than ourselves.
Right.
Right. I listened to a rabbi speak. There's this virtual Seder I watched this weekend.
Oh, nice.
And I can't think of the rabbi's name, but the rabbi really talked about during this time of darkness and light, talked about how we are genetically coded. It is in us to be hopeful, right? It is in us because we are people that have come through resistance and resilience, right? And so, of course, she was talking about Jewish people, but I take this, you know, for most of us in this world, people of color.
Right.
Speaking specifically for Black people, like that is genetically coded in us.
Yeah.
We know how to survive, and we know how to thrive, and we know how to be joyful in these moments. And I hold on to that. I hold on to that. I hold on to the beauty that will be out there. You know, the art that's being created right now, and the way that people are taking care of one another. But I have to tell you, the way I see folks taking care of one another is the way I've seen people take care of each other my entire life. You know, I got 3 Cloroxes. Do you need one? I got this. Do you have enough? Like, that was my life growing up.
Showing up for each other. Yeah.
Always. You got enough money? You need anything? I'm going to the store. I'll drop it off for you. Like, hello. That's every day in my community and in my family. So I feel like we were ready for this in a lot of ways, right? We already had those connections. You know, I have 10 people a day checking in on me. You good? You all right? You need anything? Like, how you handling this? Like, so while I'm socially distant, I don't ever feel alone. And for me, I'm like, again, that's because I've been doing this work forever. And I was ready for this moment in all the ways for me that really matter. So the support, the joy, the balance, the belonging, the spiritual connection. Yeah, that's how we get through it. But I don't want us to forget these things when we're on the other side.
Right. And I think that this definitely, I so appreciate you bringing to the forefront, that thread about this contrast of the light and the dark already living within us as human beings, and that we are incredibly resilient. We've been here before, and we have the tools that we need to push through. And this is incredibly confronting for a lot of folks who may not be as intimately connected with that place in themselves that is resilient and has that fortitude and that knowing of the history and the places where their ancestors have been before. And so really being able to touch into some of those pieces that you talked about, the joy, the support, the spirituality, the belonging, is going to be the work.
Yeah. And again, also having the lens of who's not here, right? Like, because it's very few times I've heard people speak of folks with disability. Like, what's the plan for them during all of this?
Right.
You know, it's no coincidence that these essential workers are women and people of color. And, you know, it's no coincidence that the majority of reservations, I think almost all, like, they don't have hospitals built on them.
Right.
You know, this whole concept of self-isolating. You self-isolate when culturally you have 10 people living in a house with 3 bedrooms. Like,
How do you do that?
you
Right.
don't, you cannot. And
Mm-hmm.
so even this whole concept, right, of self-isolating and are so foreign to so many of us,
Mm-hmm.
and don't fit into the lives that we lead. So it's for me, it's been really fascinating to see who's being left behind. And they're being left behind because they literally weren't thought of during this process. And so for me, that's the work that I do with companies is who's not here? Who's never here?
Mm.
Who's never thought of? Who don't you have a relationship with?
Right.
Right. So yeah, I'm hoping that our understanding of community and family and care are expanded during this time, not so binary.
Right. And like you were saying, if we do step into that role of allowing community and belonging to expand during this time, how do we also carry that into the next chapter when we're not in the time of a global pandemic?
Yeah.
How do we hold each other accountable to make that part of our culture and our lived experience, even
right. When things are great and sunny and beautiful
are fine, right?
and normal, whatever that is, which we will never go back.
Whatever normal is, right? And I love to ask each of our guests what being more connected means to you.
So my youngest daughter is here with me. She lives in Atlanta and all her work dried up instantly. Mm. So I was like, come home, like come hang out with me. And I have not lived with any of my children for 11, 12 years now. So it's been really great having her back with me. But like I said, I'm really fortunate to have this really rich community. And it's so funny. I look outside and somebody will have left me a can of Lysol, right? Like I literally, someone knew I was looking for Lysol and they left it on my car. Like it's this sense of knowing no matter what, I am so deeply loved and cared for.
Right.
In all the ways that matter. And that I love and deeply care for others just like that. Mm. One of the things that I've done, a friend of mine, they adopted a baby almost 3 years ago. And I started sending them diapers once a month, a big pack of diapers once a month. I did it for 2 years. I just stopped because they were like, we are trying to get this child potty trained. So
yeah.
And so then I found another parent, another family, and I send them that.
Incredible.
When I tell you, like, that's what, $30 a month. And for some people, that's a lot of money, and that's not, I don't miss it at all, period. Mm-hmm. I'm very fortunate in that sense. Mm-hmm. And so I found another family, and now I send them diapers automatically every month. I just check in. We still need the same size? Okay. Right? We ready for it? And when that ends, I'm going to find somebody else because I am just like, we have to raise our children. Like, it is all communal. It is all collective. I was that parent. I was that single mom. I know that struggle. I know. So just to have one thing taken off my list.
Huge.
When I didn't have to ask for it. When somebody just saw me. They saw me and gave me what I needed with no concept of anything in return.
Right.
And for me, that's it. So I'm happy that I have the ability and the space to allow others to come and shelter in and stay safe and home with me. I'm happy that I have the ability to help ease some of the load from people, whether that's just me sending a dinner over or diapers or whatever that is.
Right.
And I'm really fortunate that I have the ability to see people and meet their needs before they have to ask for it, or before they become so stressed to the point that that's the one thing that breaks them that day.
Right.
So yeah, I just believe in us really seeing folks and seeing where people are at, and just helping them where they are in those moments.
Yes, believing and really seeing folks. And I think that all ties in so beautifully with how that's deeply rooted in the work that you do and being in right relationship with others,
Yeah.
and how important and how critical that is at this time just continues to be echoed in every area of life, right? Within our individual family unit, within our neighborhoods, within the health system, within government. How can we be in more right relationship with one another so that we can actually live in the world and create systems that serve all of us?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to see you, right? I have to know you and I have to see you.
Mm.
So I can see what you need. So once you have your needs, it's like, this is symbiotic, right? Like, I gotta care for you so that there's a safety net to care for me,
Mm.
right? If I
Right.
don't care for you, there is a safety net. And we're seeing that right now. Because I didn't care if you had health care, because I did.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's the way it'd been operating.
And now I know that, oh, your having health care is part of my safety net. That keeps me safe.
It's part of keeping me well.
It keeps me well.
Yep.
So I have to see you and care for you so that I have a safety net as well.
So powerful. And are there any other messages that you'd like to share with our audience before we begin to wrap?
No, well, y'all can always find me online. I'm all over social media. I use Twitter to say bad words, so if you're allergic to bad words, don't follow me on Twitter. You can follow Facebook and Instagram for more educational stuff. And Twitter is where I go. I literally go to Twitter to pick fights with strangers. It's one of the things that I do. Yeah, and no, and then I guess the only other thing I would say is, you know, let's just love each other and mean it. Like, really, really mean it.
Yes, love each other and mean it. Well,
Mean it.
Desiree, I am so, so grateful that you shared your time and your energy to be a part of this conversation today. I know that it's going to be so supportive for our audience in this time, as we're all just seeking to figure out how we can be more connected with ourselves and those around us, and do it in a way that is aligned for us, that is creating right relationship with others, and is allowing us to be fortified and nourished, and not necessarily falling into some of the sticky parts that you were talking about with self-isolation and distancing ourselves from one another, and continuing to foster some of the harmful systems that we're all swimming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Be well.
Be well.